I'm Janelle Riley, and I'm your host for today's Half Hour with the Madison. Please join me in welcoming today's guest, director and cinematographer, Christina Alexandra Voros. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely love the show. Can you sort of describe it in your own words to someone who maybe hasn't seen it before?
The Madison is a story about the Clyburn family, a family from New York City who is forced to discover a world they didn't anticipate traveling to Montana. And in the process of doing so, discover things about themselves that they never would have understood if they hadn't left the comfort of their East Coast city urban cocoon.
That's fantastic. This is not your first time doing that.
No, I've had the real pleasure of being able to talk about this show a lot in the last couple of months. It's a huge part of my heart. It's a story that resonates very much with me personally, and I was so lucky to be able to work with this cast and crew in telling this story.
Well, let's take a look at the trailer.
At night, the bull elk come down to the river and bugle. And it drives the lady elk crazy.
They bugle.
They bugle.
I remember when you used to bugle.
Memories. It's like a movie. We can play it over and over to revisit all those times we did have together. Come on! All the talks, all the laughs, all the hugs.
Not the same, though, as a real hug.
No, it's not the same. Mine is not a family designed to withstand tragedy.
The worry is what you do next.
I know you are hurting. We are all hurting.
I'm 65 years old. I have a very small window to feed this. Wanna go fishing?
I don't know how.
Neither do I. But men do it drunk. So how hard can it be?
You will have as much life as you allow yourself.
Is it bad? It's not funny.
That's why I'm here. I make a memory a day.
We got a fish! We got a fish! Oh, we got a fish!
So this show is part of the Taylor Sheridan universe, which is, so expansive and entertaining, but it's very intimate in a way I'm not sure we've seen before. I know you've worked with Taylor before. How did he sort of pitch this series to you, and what attracted you to it?
I've been working with Taylor since the first season of Yellowstone. I was a B camera operator on that first season. I started working as a cinematographer for him on season 2, and then started directing on the show on season 3. And we've worked together on Yellowstone, on 1883, on Bass Reeves, on Madison, and now on Frisco King. So I've been really blessed to work with Taylor's writing for the better part of the last decade. When he first started talking about this project, I could tell it was something coming from a place in his heart that was very intimate to him. It reminded me when I first read it of the poetry that he really leaned into in 1883, which is one of my favorite shows that I've had the opportunity to work with him. And he's writing from a place of a real profound emotional truth, I think, and writing for characters who are dealing with grief and loss. And I don't know, I never know where Taylor is drawing his inspiration from, but this one in particular felt like it was coming from a very personal place.
Mm. You must have a great shorthand at this point, with him as a creator, and you probably still have lengthy conversations about the look and the feel you want from the show. But I imagine working with someone that long, you really get to know what you're looking for.
Yeah, I like to say Taylor's like the crazy big brother that I always wanted. He is a master at putting the DNA of a story into the scripts themselves. I wish people had an opportunity to actually read the drafts, because what you get in that experience is different from what you see on television, because there's so much direction in the writing, in the way locations are described, in the way casting is hinted at. He's very good at putting everything that matters to him in the page itself. So you have this remarkable map to guide you through the process. And it's funny, in some ways, I feel like we talk less the more that we do, because there's such a known shorthand. And I've learned how to interpret his writing. He's learned how to, where he suspects I am going to need guidance in things. And so we fixate on certain specific details, but there's a tremendous amount of trust. Taylor is a very loyal and a very generous person to work with. He puts a lot of faith in the people that he trusts to tell his stories. He's also very good at seeing something in people that they might not necessarily see in themselves when he hands a project or a role or a department head position over to someone. He's very good at sort of pushing people into the deep end, knowing that you're ready to swim. And I think with this show in particular, it was my first time having the opportunity to direct all the episodes of a season. And, I think I had a certain amount of trepidation in the beginning, just in terms of the process and doing it justice and having enough time. And he really trusted that I was ready for it and that I was the right person to tell the story. I don't think when he first sent me the script, I don't think he realized how much the DNA of the story reflected parts of my own life. I grew up on the East Coast. My family was from New York City and Boston. I met my husband on a movie in Mississippi 15 years ago, and he was a wrangler from West Texas. And so now, when I'm not working in Fort Worth, we live out in West Texas in the middle of nowhere. So I experienced firsthand the kind of sort of evolution that comes from leaving a place that you feel really identifies who you are and what's important to you, and then landing in a spot you never imagined finding yourself in, and not only having to grapple with your own preconceived notions of what that different world is like, but also grappling with the way being in a rural environment, being in wide open spaces, can change you as a person and make you understand things about yourself that you never would have understood if you hadn't left the comforts of home.
I was actually going to ask about that because I don't know if he's done that before. Had one director a helm the entire season, all you have 6 episodes, which I think of as really like one big movie. And was that his idea? Was that intimidating to you, or is it thrilling?
It was thrilling. It is not the first time he's done that. Ben Richardson helmed all episodes of 1923. Stephen Kay directed all the episodes of last season of Landman. I think Taylor is good at identifying the kind of stories certain storytellers will naturally gravitate to and thrive in. And so this, for him, I think felt like something that was very much my wheelhouse. I think I was intimidated by only, I shoot for myself most of the time. So I work as a director and as a DP. So the sheer enormity of prepping and directing and shooting 6 episodes back to back felt like a marathon, but I think it was the right time for it. I had strangely just come out of a season of grief in my own life, and it all felt very visceral and palpable. And sometimes, magic strikes, and you are lucky enough to tell the story at the right time in your life as a storyteller for it to really matter to you.
We have to talk about this amazing cast, but before we do, why don't we actually take a look at a clip from the series featuring, the wonderful Michelle Pfeiffer.
He named this valley after me. So the grass reminds him of my hair. Reminded. Oh, God. Speaking about him in the present tense is going to be a hard habit to break.
It's beautiful.
I want to bury him here. This was Paul's home, and in Preston's heart, I think it was his home too.
Mom, if you do that, you can't visit him. Hey, don't you want to visit him?
I will visit him.
And what if the new owners don't let you?
And why would there be new owners?
Because you can't keep this place. I mean, how are you going to take care of it?
Take care of what? It's 3 cabins. Only one of them has water. What's to take care of?
The land?
The land takes care of itself.
Okay, well, Mom, who's going to take care of you while you're out here? I mean, Paige couldn't even go to the bathroom without needing a trip to the ER.
I am not Paige.
Fair enough.
Do you think this is any more dangerous than walking to the pharmacy down First Avenue?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Yeah, well, I don't see it that way.
Mom, I don't know how you move on.
I have no intention of moving on, ever. I will never love again. I won't even try. Holding on to him is the closest I will get, and that is what I plan to do.
First of all, I just have to ask, what is it like to work with the amazing Michelle Pfeiffer, who I think is doing some of the best work of her career, and Kurt Russell as well?
I mean, it's a cliche, but it's a dream come true, right? I mean, I grew up watching both of them as sort of the guiding light of what great performers are and the commitment that actors give to their roles. The two of them are legends. And one of the things that was really beautiful about this show is the cast was sort of bookended by these two just giants, Kurt and Michelle, who have done everything and done everything well. And then the family unit was made up of all these different actors who are at completely different points in their career. And it was such a beautifully supportive environment for all of us. Michelle and Kurt did a wonderful job being the matriarch and patriarch of the family on screen, but also off screen. And Michelle, especially, she carries this entire show on her shoulders. And the depth of commitment, the fearlessness, the willingness to dive deep into really sticky, emotionally uncomfortable places. I mean, it's a masterclass. I think her performance in the show is a masterclass. And the cast that surrounds her all rose to that challenge. I mean, that scene with Beau and Michelle, I mean, Beau is just, her performance in the show is staggeringly beautiful. She is vulnerable, she is strong, she is straddling the divide between being a daughter and being a mother and trying to hold things together when her mother can't. It was a real joy to be able to work with this ensemble because it really is an ensemble piece. I mean, I can't tell you how many scenes had 7 people in it at the same time, and getting to work with actors in that capacity almost feels like directing a play sometimes. It's all about the performance. It's all about the connection between the two of them. It's all about the way they listen to each other. And I'm so honored by having been present to watch these tremendous artists do what they do in this show.
And something that I think that clip is a great example of is that, this it showcases this beauty of Montana, but it doesn't do so at the cost of the characters or the story. Can you sort of talk about how you showcase this gorgeous landscape without ever overshadowing, the humanity in the story?
Well, I think the landscape is a character, perhaps the biggest character in this show. And Taylor does that a lot in his writing. I mean, Yellowstone was about the Yellowstone and everyone holding on to this land. He does that in a lot of his stories. And in this one in particular, the land is what connects them. The land is what divides them. The land is what makes them feel close to each other, but also vulnerable. And so in thinking about how to place this very intimate story in this vast expanse of rugged, mountainous terrain, we were very conscious of the ways in which being out in nature can make you feel closer to the people you share that experience with, but it can also make you feel very, very small and very vulnerable and the tininess of one life in the vast expanse. I mean, you look at that particular location, which we called Stacy's Valley, And it was important to not only show these two women close together, but also how small they were in the scope of the world. And I think when you spend time in locations like that geographically, both things are very true. Both things are very palpable. You are in awe of its enormity and its power, but you also feel very alive and very connected to the place. And this is a story about people who show up in a new world that they don't feel connected to at first. We talked about ways to make the ranch and the landscape in Montana feel foreign and barren and dangerous in the beginning. And then over the course of the season, you start to really reveal the splendor of the place through the eyes of the people who are starting to appreciate everything about the land that their father loved so much.
And I love all these characters in the show, but particularly these strong women and really the focus on female relationships. What was it like to get to really showcase mothers and daughters and sisters in such an authentic way?
You know, I think the best performances are drawn from deep within an actor's own experience, right? And I feel like everyone, all of the women in this show, drew from their experience as mothers or daughters, went to very deep places in those relationships, went to the places that feel most vulnerable, went to the places that feel most loving. One of my favorite moments on set was the very first day that Michelle and Rebecca Spence, who plays Liliana, worked together. They had never met. I think they said hello to each other in cast holding for like 45 seconds. And Michelle walks down the river and she's holding a percolator full of water and she sees her best friend of 40 years and she drops it and they run to each other and embrace. And these two women who had never spent any time with each other, in that moment, you felt 40 years of history. They were each drawing from their own personal experience, and we did the master, and they're this big in the frame, and everyone was in tears. It was so powerful. And that doesn't come, I mean, that can come from building a relationship over time with another actor and creating the story, but that's not what this is. They both just went so deep and were so true to something they were finding in themselves that that moment felt incredibly lived in and so viscerally powerful that we were all just speechless.
Wow. And you have so many great actors and they probably have different styles and backgrounds. And as a director, how do you sort of, get them all to on the same page to work under like as a cohesive whole?
I think it's less about getting people on the same page and more about realizing where they want to be on that page. I mean, on any show, you have actors who, are their best right out of the gate, and others that need a couple goes at it to really find their cadence, and that can change from actor to actor, from day to day. I mean, Michelle and I tried to communicate a lot, especially in the more powerful scenes. And I'd say, do you want to start tight today? Do you want to start in the close-ups? It feels like you're right there. And then other days when you have seven people talking and you need to find the rhythm of the scene, sometimes I would start with the person who speaks the least because they don't have quite as much to carry, and that gives everybody else time to kind of find the edges of where they want to go. One of the beautiful things about the show and a lot of Taylor's shows is we're fortunate enough to use multiple cameras. So when we were shooting the Montana portion of the Madison, we had 5 cameras for all of that work. And sometimes it's overkill and sometimes you don't need them. But when you're shooting 7 people in a scene together and you're shooting in natural light and you have the capacity to cover multiple performances at the same time, what happens is when you give one note to one actor, it doesn't just change their coverage, it changes the energy of the entire scene. And when you have multiple cameras, you can capture the way the performances are fueling each other in a way that doesn't force people to do things exactly the same every time. People can keep searching for different boundaries of where they want to go emotionally, but it's cohesive when you cut it together because everyone's on screen at the same time. So it feels like watching a group of musicians play jazz, right? They're all playing off of each other. And I think it allows actors to feel like they have freedom to live in the scene in a way that isn't bounded by things being absolutely identical every time, and it really allows the performances to breathe.
It's so interesting you were mentioning earlier about, the chemistry just sometimes being there. And I always think it's a little strange to put together a group of people and say, act like you've known each other, your whole lives. And sometimes it's instantaneous, and other times, it takes work, but this really feels like a family for all the, the good and bad that entails. Did that sort of develop naturally?
It kind of felt like that right out of the box. There were some relationships that pre-existed. Bo and Patrick had been friends for a very long time. Michelle and Kurt hadn't seen each other for years, but they'd done Tequila Sunrise together. They weren't strangers to each other. But also, I think one of Taylor's superpowers is his casting. He is so good at identifying the heartbeat, the soul of a character in a certain actor and trusting his first reaction to a performance, to a read. And he really curated this family unit in a way that felt authentic from the get-go. And then we all spent a lot of time together every weekend. People were having barbecues or going hiking, or, the cast spent a lot of time together outside of set. But I really felt like there was a connection from the get-go, and we started, the first episode is very much about this family being disconnected from each other. So the earliest stuff we shot was when people had spent the least amount of time together. And so as the season coalesced and people were spending more time together, it dovetailed with the connections that were happening in the story. And I think that worked very beautifully.
And you mentioned you also serve as a cinematographer on the series, which I imagine allows you to develop an even more specific visual language. What were some of the influences on the look?
When we first talked about this show, I think the three movies Taylor mentioned were Tree of Life, uh, Legends of the Fall, and Ordinary People, which, if you look at those three movies, have nothing to do with one another in terms of the cinematography. I think that was like the spiritual DNA of the show to him. I think having worked in the world of Yellowstone for a long time, I think a landscape sort of teaches you how to shoot her. And you have to lean into what nature wants to give you. It doesn't matter if you think you want to shoot this way because you like that tree. If the sun is coming this way, it's never going to look beautiful. It's never going to look atmospheric. You kind of like the characters, you have to learn when you can and can't control nature. And I think leaning into it in an organic way is a tremendous relief, really, because it helps guide you into how the story wants to be told, how the landscape wants to be shot. And you are not fighting to create something that you'll never be able to trump a sunset, dangling over a mountaintop, right? I don't care how many HMIs you have, you can't outdo nature in its most spectacular moments. And so we just really leaned into it. I think one of the benefits of doing both roles is I don't have to talk a lot. I don't have to explain something to another person to then activate it on camera in terms of the technical aspect of it. And I've been lucky enough to work with the same team for such a long time. Our camera team, my gaffer, John Gorman, and my key grip, Craig Sullivan, like we've been doing this together for almost a decade. And so it's the jazz reference again. They understand what I'm looking for. I understand how long things take. We're all moving very efficiently to make sure we are in the right place at the right time with the right light. And when you have that kind of cohesion as a filmmaking family, there's a lot of freedom to make sure you're capturing the moments when the story is going to look as beautiful as it can.
And I also love how this show it can be, Stacy is dealing with the grief of losing her husband. The show can be very dramatic and tender, and then turn around and be really, really funny. Can you sort of talk about layering in that comedy? Was that a conscious choice to give us, some relief?
I mean, it's definitely in the DNA of the script itself. I think Taylor is very aware of the fact that death is tragic, loss is heartbreaking, but there's also all sorts of absurd humor that happens when people are dealing with impossible things when they are not their best selves. The absurd in us comes out when we are dealing with grief. And for a viewer, it allows you to take a breath a little bit, but also it's incredibly familiar to anyone who's gone through the process of grief. It is not it is not just crying for 2 months. It is crying and then coping and then trying to do something very simple that's suddenly very hard because everything else is topsy-turvy. And I think he captured that really beautifully in the scripts.
Absolutely. So we always end our half hour with a final question. If there is one thing about this series that stands out for you that you think would make someone who hasn't had a chance to check it out yet, what would that be?
I think you just need to see Michelle Pfeiffer's performance. I mean, she is such a rare talent to begin with, and I really think that what she has done in this show is absolutely remarkable. It is one of the greatest performances from an actress I've ever been lucky enough to witness. And if you have any appreciation for her as an artist, I feel like this is a must-see.
Do you ever have moments? I mean, I know you've worked with a lot of great actors, but where you're like, that's Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh, all the time. And you just have to kind of like put it over there, right? I mean, the first scene I shot with Michelle and Kurt, I was like, that's Michelle Pfeiffer and Kurt Russell. Okay, get it together, Voros. You have to kind of like take the fangirl out and put her on a shelf, and forget that you spent your entire childhood watching their movies, and then look at what truth you're trying to find in that moment, get back to it.
Hmm. Well, again, it's such a great series. I want to just say thank you to Paramount Plus and to Christina for joining us today, and to everyone watching us. Thank you so much for joining us for this half hour with.
Thank you so much.